Hello, everybody. How is it going? I'm your host, NeoStarling, and I'm here with my show, Neo's Theory, available on YouTube for just free. So just check that out. I'm here with the WWE Smackdown Live draft results and matches as well. It was a pretty interesting night. I'm not gonna lie. Being that it was a SmackDown Live on Tuesday nights now on the USA Network, it wasn't as good in terms of wrestling wise as you would think it'd be, due to the fact that they were doing the draft. So a lot of the time primarily went into doing their picks rather than putting up like quality matches. It was kind of a throwaway show, to be honest, outside of the draft picks. But we did have some good surprises. So without further ado, I'm going to get down to this show. So first draft pick we had was on Raw, of course, because Raw got a draft pick per everyone that SmackDown got because it's a 3-hour show. So those were the rules, as well as SmackDown and Raw being able to keep an entire tag team together had they chosen to keep them together. If they didn't want them together, then, they'd be screwed, in other words. So the first one, Raw, was Seth Rollins. Of course, no surprise, Stephanie McMahon interrupted Mick Foley right before he was going to make the announcement. Little heelish move on her end, but it's all good because Seth Rollins is now on Raw. And of course, the predictability of the following move, which would be Daniel Bryan and Shane McMahon picking Dean Ambrose, the current WWE World Heavyweight Champion, to represent SmackDown. So those two, after Battlegrounds, will no longer be able to fight each other for the foreseeable future. Moving on, we had Charlotte, which was also picked by Raw, the first female pick, which was also the second pick. Your current WWE Women's Champion, Charlotte, is now on Raw. And SmackDown's second pick was none other than the phenomenal AJ Styles. That's right. It was AJ Styles. He was the second pick. Huge pick, in my opinion, for SmackDown. I thought that really started them off well until Raw threw us a doobie. And they were like, you know what? You got AJ? You can keep the phenomenal one. We're going to introduce somebody from NXT. And this time, Stephanie had no problem letting Mick Foley say it. And it is none other than the debut. It's going to be the Raw debut of Finn Balor. That is right, Finn Balor, the demon Finn Balor. He is, for the first time, going to be outside of NXT, and he's going to be on the main roster. Congratulations to Finn. He really deserves it. I guess they'll make way for like Shinsuke Nakamura if he doesn't get picked to be like one of the top guys pretty much on NXT. After that, SmackDown chose John Cena. Yes, John Cena, which was pretty interesting because John actually had the first match with Luke Gallows, and they were talking during the match. Well, Michael Cole pretty much brought up how Cena is kind of a part-timer now. He didn't say it directly, but he essentially said that, they'd have a difficult time choosing whether or not they'd want to pick Cena or not due to the fact that he is essentially a part-timer at this point. With all the, things that he's been doing lately, he doesn't have as much time. I don't know if you've noticed, he hasn't been appearing on TV as much. In wrestling, at least. But it's all good because Cena is now on SmackDown. Good choice on them. Cena is a big enough name to the point where you want to keep him on your show. Plus, he still has that rivalry with AJ Styles, so you can't really separate them. Next, Raw chose Brock Lesnar. That is right, Brock Lesnar. After his controversial drug failure test that he took on the UFC, and they didn't bring it up at all, which I thought was interesting. So Brock Lesnar is pretty much going to be on Raw, which is pretty awesome. Can't fight that. Let's get down to some matches real quick. So like I said earlier, John Cena fought against Luke Gallows. It was a really short match, of course, given the nature of the draft. I didn't expect any of these matches to really be long. With the assistance of Enzo and Cass, Cena was able to get the win. So they had a little bit of chemistry for that night versus how they did on Raw, where Enzo inadvertently cost Cena the match. So it's a good thing. Cena and Enzo and Cass are going in with some momentum to Battleground. Who is going to win? We shall see. The next match was actually Darren Young and Zack Ryder versus The Miz and Rusev, with Bob Backlund on the side of Darren Young and Maurice, of course, on the side of her husband, The Miz. This match, again, it was no big deal. The only noteworthy thing that really happened here was that Darren Young did the crossface chicken wing on The Miz and actually got the submission. So Bob Backlund has officially passed on that move to Darren Young in an effort to make him great again. Next, we were supposed to have a match which was supposed to be Kane versus Kevin Owens. Sami Zayn, of course, interfered. They started a little punching match between each other like they always do. They got in the ring. Big mistake, because Kane grabbed both of them, and emphatically, as all these announcers like saying, they overused the hell out of emphatically, choke slams both of them onto the ring. That was it. There was no real match that happened. That was just Kane making a statement because of the interference that happened in his match. Let's get back to some more draft picks. So Raw chooses The New Day, which was pretty cool. They kept all the members together, so that's 3 people that they're getting in one shot. SmackDown followed that up with none other than the Viper, the Legend Killer, the Apex Predator, Randy Orton. That's right, Orton. I think Orton's a good pick for SmackDown. Given the fact that, you know, they are going to need star power. I think they did a really good job with AJ Cena and Orton in that sense. Raw's getting a lot more bodies than SmackDown's getting. So you would think that, you know, your pick, every pick counts in this case for SmackDown. So you want to make sure that you get the guys that you feel are going to get the job done in the ring. But at the same time, you also want to give that veteran presence to kind of legitimize these new guys, because you're going to have to create new stars. There's no choice. So good pick on them. Raw followed that up with Sami Zayn. So that's pretty cool. Again, the new era showing face on Monday Night Raw. That's also pretty awesome. I think Sami is going to make a good addition to Raw, because I'm sure a lot of people were expecting Sami to be, you know, a SmackDown tier wrestler. I'm kind of glad they put him on Raw. I mean, Raw's still obviously going to be the flagship show, but you never know what's going to end up happening. So I think that's pretty neat. SmackDown followed that up with Bray Wyatt, the Eater of Worlds. What I didn't like that they did earlier was Michael Cole, during one of the matches, was announcing how Bray Wyatt and the Wyatt family are going to be picked separately. So that was kind of messed up. I felt like they shouldn't have necessarily said that, because, you know, you wanted to save that for later. Like, oh, when Bray Wyatt was announced, was he going to be announced with the family or not? And in this case, he's not. So as a result, who knows what's going to happen? And spoiler alert, I will let you know in advance that throughout the rest of this show, no other Wyatt family members got picked. What does that mean for the Wyatt family? We'll find out in a little while. So after that, let's get back to another match. Speaking of Bray Wyatt fought Xavier Woods. It was a short but hard fought match. I thought this was one of the better matches from the night, which we'd gotten so far. Bray Wyatt does pick up the victory, which was pretty cool. He hits him with the Sister Abigail, and it's a little weird what's happening between those two, because actually Byron Saxton did a really good job in this sense. Even though I'm not a big fan of him on the commentary team, I thought he did a good job mentioning the fact that Xavier Woods was scared because he was fighting Bray Wyatt one-on-one and he didn't have the New Day with him like he did on Monday, which I thought was interesting, because after that skit that they did at the Wyatt's compound, you know, it didn't really affect them much. They kind of came on Raw the next day like if nothing happened. But the fact that Xavier was actually affected this time, and Byron obviously bringing up the fact that he's alone and he doesn't have the New Day helping him in this match, actually kind of gave legitimacy to that little, you know, thing that they decided to do. That was a ripoff of the Final Deletion. But that's neither here nor there. Anyway, Bray Wyatt gets the victory. That's my dude, Bray Wyatt. We had a 2-on-1 handicap match. It was Dana Brooke and Charlotte versus Sasha Banks. Obviously, Sasha did not win. Both divas, I'm sorry, no, they're not divas anymore. Both of the women got the better of her. 2-on-1 situation. It's just really hard for Sasha Banks to win. And had she won that match, honestly, it would have just taken the credibility away from Charlotte, because she is the women's champ. So if Sasha Banks could beat the champ and a partner of hers at the same time, then what good is that belt, really, right? So we go on with some more draft picks here. Sasha Banks was picked on Monday Night Raw, so her and Charlotte could obviously continue their feud. And Becky Lynch was picked on SmackDown, which I thought was funny, because up until this point, SmackDown hadn't picked any women yet, and Mick Foley actually made it a point to say that, hey, you know, guys, there are women on this roster as well. You know, kind of taking a jab at them. And Mick Foley clearly is not, he's not the same Mick Foley anymore. His ability to cut promos, his ability to speak is kind of winding down a little bit. And I noticed it a little bit on Raw, but it wasn't too bad. But now it's becoming more apparent. I kind of think I thought he should have just let Stephanie do most of the talking, honestly, at this point, because again, he's just not the same Mick Foley promo wise anymore. But you know, he could also be out of practice. So let's see what ends up happening later on. So let's get back to some more draft picks. Chris Jericho was chosen on Raw. So you got the star power of Jericho. You got a veteran on Raw. Not a bad pick. Honestly, I'm a little indifferent about Jericho at this point in his career. It's neither here nor there with him anymore. But still a good pick overall for any brand. I knew they were going to choose him. Smackdown ends up getting The Miz and Maurice. So Intercontinental belt, the championship will be remaining on SmackDown because Rusev and Lana were chosen for Raw. So the United States Championship is going to stay on Raw. So I guess that's a good way of keeping, you know, they're dividing the championships as evenly as they can. Even though now in reality, Raw has most of the belts because Charlotte, the New Day, and Rusev are all champs and they're all on Raw. So the majority of the Raw people have the championships at this point. So moving on, we get Baron Corbin that gets chosen on SmackDown. And let's see what happens. Hopefully SmackDown will be a good platform for him to showcase his abilities. He's got a good look. His in-ring ability it's okay. He's passable. He doesn't have any real good mic work though, and that's something I think he needs to work on. But with this SmackDown platform and these new opportunities that Daniel Bryan promises, only time will tell in reality if Baron Corbin becomes somebody worthy of note or he just kind of like fades into obscurity. We'll only find out with time. Kevin Owens, great pick for Raw. Honestly, they hit a home run with Kevin Owens. I think that SmackDown should have chosen him sooner. I think they should have broken him and Sami Zayn apart, but they kept them on the same show. Although those two have great chemistry, you know, spanning back from like their many, many years traveling together around the world. But I still think it would have been a good idea to split them up just for that very reason, just so that they can kind of get out of each other's shadows and just have the opportunity to become stars on their own instead of sort of making them like a package deal. But either way, Kevin Owens is great on the mic. He's an amazing wrestler, and he's great on commentary. So Raw will definitely have some great moments with Kevin Owens on board. Next, we get Dolph Ziggler for SmackDown. And I like Ziggler. I really do. Even though nowadays they don't do much with him, there was a point where Ziggler was the man, and he still performs really well in the ring. So maybe SmackDown will give him the opportunity as well to kind of get a second breath of life. And if that happens, then cool, good for Ziggler. I've always been a Ziggler fan, whether he was a heel or a face. So let's see what ends up happening with him. Enzo Amore and Big Cass were drafted together on Monday Night Raw. That's awesome. I'm glad they didn't break them up yet, because I could almost see Vince just like looking at Cass, and he was like, "We have to split them up. Big Cass is money. He's 7 foot tall, and he has long hair." I was kind of afraid. That's a really bad Vince impression, but you know, I was kind of afraid that they were going to split them up. I think both of them complement each other, and it's a little too soon to split them up, even though I think individually they can both be good stars. So good for them. That was a good pick on Raw's end. Natalya got chosen to be on SmackDown. Let's see what happens there. She's obviously going to keep beefing with Becky Lynch, which is why they chose her on SmackDown. It's funny because I feel like a lot of these picks that they did were based off of current rivalries, and I don't necessarily think they should have done that. I think they should have tried to separate those people, if anything, because we've seen it so much. Except for Becky Lynch and Natalya, we haven't really seen too much of that yet. I look forward to seeing Natty as a heel a little more often and seeing how Becky Lynch overcomes if she wins the rivalry at all. Anyway, moving on, we'll go with the last pick of SmackDown, which was Alberto Del Rio. Good choice for SmackDown. Alberto Del Rio is a bona fide star. Say what you will about him. He came back to the WWE with like a brand new body. Dude's like chiseled out of stone right now. And I think he's a good fit. He's a great competitor. His in-ring work is not that bad. So good pick on SmackDown's end. I'll run through the rest of the matches and then through the rest of the draft picks. So we had a Chris Jericho versus Cesaro match, which was okay. It wasn't a terrible match. Jericho beat Cesaro. I'm kind of okay with that, to be perfectly honest with you. Again, it's one of those situations where If Jericho just stares at lights all the time, he's no longer legitimate and he becomes a joke. So Jericho has to get wins once in a while. You had him lose to Sami Zayn recently, so I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that you're going to give him a win against Cesaro, especially since Cesaro hasn't been pushed to the moon yet. And I say yet because I feel like eventually he'll get his opportunity. Speaking of Cesaro, he was also picked. I'm getting ahead of myself. The Big Show was picked for Raw. Good for them. The Big Show, again, he's at that point in his career where he's not going to make many appearances to begin with. So good for him. He'll stay on Raw. Nia Jax was brought in from NXT. And to be really honest with you, I'm kind of not a big fan. Not a fan of Nia Jax in general. I think she's okay, but I think she needs a little more seasoning, a little more sugar and spice and everything nasty before you bring her in to the main roster. I feel like out of all the picks, I get why they haven't picked Bayley yet. I get why some of the people that they haven't chosen that are better qualified have gone there, because the reality is that you kind of need bigger stars in NXT so that you can keep it relevant. If you just pluck all the good people out and then you leave them with nobodies, then NXT suddenly becomes like an ECW or it just becomes nothing, so you don't want that to happen, obviously. I think I forgot some drafts for SmackDown. I don't know if I brought up Randy. Oh, I did bring up Randy Orton. I did mention him. So yeah, Roman Reigns was also chosen to be on Raw. Good for Roman. That means that him and Seth will be able to continue their rivalry, which makes me kind of worry for Dean. It makes me feel like they're gonna allow. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me rewind a little bit because I don't want to spoil the main event just yet. So Roman Reigns will be on Raw. Cesaro, Neville, the returning Neville, Adrian Neville, or just Neville as they call him now, has returned. They didn't show him, obviously, but he's coming back from his injury, and he will be on Monday Night Raw, which is a great opportunity, I think, for Neville. I'm more than sure they were going to peg him as a SmackDown guy, and I guess because the Cruiserweight Classic or the Cruiserweight Championship is going to be exclusive to Raw, you're going to want Neville there to work with the newer guys that are going to come in. So Neville's actually a great choice for that. They might even make him the Cruiserweight Champion. Who knows? Sheamus was chosen for Raw. Sheamus, again, I'm a little indifferent about him. Whether he was on SmackDown or Raw, I think he would have offered the same thing. Sheamus, all-around good promo. He's not a bad heel, and he's good in the ring. So good for him, even if they don't do anything major with him. Back to the last match. So we had Dean Ambrose versus Seth Rollins, a rematch from Monday Night Raw for the WWE Championship. It's not the WWE World Heavyweight Championship anymore because, they kind of got rid of that name, I feel, because they're trying to set the stage to make it so that we get a brand new belt on another show, which I think will be kind of cool because that way you don't have to have crossing champions going from show to show. So this was actually a really good match. Of course, I didn't expect anything less for the main event. Great job by both guys. They really threw it all out there. Seth Rollins scares the hell out of me every time he does the Falcon Arrow, every time he does splash, when he does the knee from the rope, the power bomb, anything that he does that requires a lot of pressure on his knee, I'm almost afraid it's just gonna buckle and fall apart on him. But obviously he's trained really hard. He is the CrossFit Jesus. He works out like hell. This guy just wanted to get back in there so badly, and he did. So congrats for Seth in terms of the fact that his knee seems to be returned to form for now. After a hard-fought match by Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose was able to retain his WWE Championship. So the current champ is on SmackDown. So as of now, SmackDown Live has the belt. That's pretty much it. The rest of the draft is taking place on the WWE Network, so you guys can just check it out there. I'll check it out a little later, maybe tomorrow or when I'm done with this video. I do have to work early in the morning. But that was pretty much it. Again, it was a show. It was all right. One other thing that I thought was interesting was how in the first match, they actually, I don't know, they were able to get commercials and the show at the same time. So you had the show on the left-hand side of the screen while you had commercials, but they didn't do that for the main event, and I thought that was strange. Whatever, that's neither here nor there. Anyway, this has been my review and my thoughts on the draft, the current draft so far from what they have chosen. If you like, please leave a comment, subscribe, word of mouth. Anything you do in reality will help me out a lot. So I really appreciate it. I'm working mornings now, so I'm going to be able to provide you guys with more content, which I've been wanting to do for a long time. If you have any questions about the draft or wrestling or anything you want to talk about in general, NeoStarling is right at the top. So you can just hashtag that on Twitter. You can follow me at NeoStarling, hashtag NeoStarling. So feel free to ask me any questions, and in future videos, I will be responding to them. So with that said, this has been my recording and review of Smackdown Live. I am NeoStarling, and if you weren't sure before,